Welcome to No Broken Legs. I am your host, Evan Belfiore. It is a rainy Saturday morning here in Lakewood, Ohio, but I got some coffee, and I got Jimmy Champ on the phone to talk about the Week 8 NFL lines. Jimmy, how are you today?
I'm good. Good to know it's raining here, so we can feel like the Browns will probably feel tomorrow in Seattle.
And before we get to the aforementioned Cleveland Browns at the Seattle Seahawks, we do have a game in the book, Jimmy. The Buffalo Bills looked, I guess kind of okay against the fighting Baker Mayfields from Tampa Bay. What did you take away from that game?
I think maybe the Bills' window of AFC Championship games may be closed. For Mike Evans or Chris Godwin having better awareness away from, were they down 6? Either going to overtime
24-18.
Yeah. Losing to the Buccaneers if the extra point is good. Like that throw, they were both there and just neither one of them were able to get the ball. And
Well, there was a pretty clear PI.
True, but
they're never going to call that. But
they're never going to call it on. It is what it is. But you're supposed to be an elite team in the AFC, so you shouldn't have games like that against a mediocre NFC team. Yeah,
I agree. Baker takes a lot of heat for that loss. I saw the next day after there were a lot of people calling him out, which I don't understand. I think he was fine. He wasn't great. He wasn't bad. No picks, 2 touchdowns. He threw for decent yardage. You'd like to see a little higher completion percentage, but the problem Tampa Bay has is the same problem they had last year and the last few years is they just can't run the ball.
Yep.
And if you can't run the ball and Baker Mayfield's your quarterback, you're probably going to struggle because throwing the ball 42 times a game isn't a recipe for success with him.
No, but it almost was. So I don't know.
And I totally agree with you about Buffalo. They look like they may have fallen back into the pack in the AFC, and maybe we're looking at Miami sneaking that division.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But that game's in the books. Josh Allen was mostly good. He did throw an interception, but it did look like he elevated his play, but it looks like he has to play really, really well for that team to win.
Yeah, but he did. He played well. Josh played well. I think as a team they played well. You just, like with the way the AFC is beaten up on the NFC, you would expect one of the better AFC teams to not have a nail-biter again. Because really up until that, the Hail Mary, the Bucs marched 40 yards.
Yeah, they did not have a lot of problems. And something that's interesting to note, the Buffalo Bills, 2-3 in the AFC, 3-0 against the NFC.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's enough about the Thursday night game. It was fine. The game everybody in Cleveland is going to be watching is the Browns taking on the Seattle Seahawks. This is in Seattle. The Seahawks are 3.5-point home favorites, -190 for their money. -190 for their money line, +158 for the Browns. Over/under 37.5. There are some low over/unders this week, by the way.
There are.
PJ Walker starting. We've talked about Deshaun Watson. When he comes back, he'll come back. Until then, it's PJ Walker, and it looks like it's going to be PJ Walker for at least the next 2 weeks. That would be my guess. But for this week, Jimmy, does PJ Walker have anything for the Seattle Seahawks?
I don't think so. Last week
he hasn't had anything for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so.
You got the win the way you got against San Francisco. You squeak out the win last week because of Myles Garrett and the kicker, but Myles Garrett also made mistakes that was the catalyst for 2 of Indy's biggest plays.
True.
The Browns offense averaged 4.4 yards per play and only had 2 drives over 40 yards. I don't think that can get you a win in Seattle. I don't really think that can keep you within 6 in Seattle. So I'm taking the Seahawks here.
Yeah, I like the Seahawks too. I also like the under because it's just every week I keep betting the under, and the last 2 weeks the Browns games have actually gone over, surprisingly. But Seattle's a very disciplined team. We have seen what happens when Kevin Stefanski teams go up against very disciplined teams that are coached well, that see the New England games. despite how different they are in their personalities, they coach in a very similar way. They want to run the ball. They want to possess the ball. They want to win on defense. They want to put pressure on your team's defense to have to be out on the field for long periods of time. And it'll be a good test for this Browns defense and this Seattle Seahawks offense. It'll give us a good gauge on where exactly are those teams, because we've seen the Browns get gashed by Baltimore and Indianapolis, and we've seen them absolutely dominate everybody else they've played. So where is that middle? Where is that consistency? I don't think they need to dominate everybody as much as they have, but they have to find a lot more consistency to get where everybody wants them to be. I was on Sully's podcast this week, the DFS Deli, and while we were talking, I had a thought about the Browns' defensive letdowns in Indianapolis. You pointed out that they just gave up on some plays. Do you think some of the big plays that Indianapolis got was also them trying to get turnovers, because that was what they were hearing all week?
No, it didn't. It didn't seem like it. Like, okay. I mean, there were guys running wide open, and to cause turnovers, you have to at least try to tackle, and they weren't doing a lot of that either.
That is a pretty good point, which is it's concerning, especially when you have Seattle. They've got 3 good receivers. They've got Kenneth Walker at running back. We'll see what Geno does. If they can make Geno uncomfortable, you can make Geno turn the ball over. So I think that would be the key to success for the Browns. I just don't like. Defensively, you get at Geno and you can cause some turnovers and maybe make something happen. I just don't know what they're going to do on offense, because what they've been doing is not – I guess it's working because they've won those 2 games, but it is not a sustainable form of it's not an offense that's going to create sustainable success.
It doesn't seem like it should be sustainable. It has been for 2 weeks, but
yeah,
it doesn't seem like you can keep winning like that.
And when I say things like P.J. Walker has only 3 turnovers in those 2 games, when he should – I mean, he could very easily have 8 turnovers in those 2 games. It's been that bad.
Yep.
So we both like Seattle. Anything else on the Browns here before we move on?
No, not really. I mean, you can win next week with P.J. Walker.
Yes.
A win in Seattle would be great, but I think the defense needs to look better than it did last week. The Colts were like bottom 10 to 15 in every offensive category, and they pretty much did whatever they wanted to against what I was told was the elite of the elite defenses in the NFL. So the defense needs to bounce back and get right, because Seattle's offense will score points and will test you and will keep putting pressure on you, which I wonder if that's a problem, because as we've noted, they're really good at tackling when guys are going backwards and side to side, but when people are coming downhill at them, they seem to be struggling to wrap up and tackle. So they're going to need to clean that up. But I agree with you. It'll take turnovers. It'll take some other wonky stuff, I believe, for Cleveland to get an outright win in this game.
Yeah, and I guess since we're not talking some of the other deeper Brown stuff, because I feel like we've just covered it the last 2 weeks, how about Dustin Hopkins? Just making 50-yard field goals like it's his job, which it is his job, but we don't expect him to just keep drilling 50-yard field goals. He's been fantastic this year, and I think that is the fact that they didn't go after him sooner, I think says something about Andrew Berry, and it's something we already know, that he wanted to stick with Cade York because he wanted his guy that he drafted to be the guy. And it seems like there's a lot of other positions on this team that he's sticking with guys because they're his guy. But there's probably somebody like Dustin Hopkins is out there that's maybe not as much better as Hopkins is than York, but it makes me think that there's other guys out there that might be better than some of the guys they're holding on to. You know, it maybe some positions like I don't know, linebacker.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I understand what you're saying. I won't kill Barry for this one, because at least he finally did the right thing. Like, we know how hard it is for him to give up on a guy he drafted that stinks.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I'm getting at. It's not, you know, the move to get Hopkins was great, but I don't understand why it took so long to move off of York.
Because he made a game-winning kick week 1 last year.
Yeah, because he saved the organization from the complete embarrassment of losing to Baker Mayfield in week 1 last year. Yeah, that's why they had to hold on to him. They hate Baker Mayfield that much.
Clearly. All the evidence would point to yes. No, but I also wonder with Hopkins' success. Now, he's been a good kicker in his career.
Yes.
But I wonder, and as we talked about before the season, I didn't know much about Bubba Ventrone as a coach. But I wonder how much that plays a difference. Would Hopkins be making these kicks with Prefer as his coach? I don't know.
Wow, that's a really good point.
But I wonder, because even though in the punt return game there haven't been a lot of yards, there also haven't been some of the sloppy mistakes the special teams has had the last couple of years. So I wonder what the difference.
But they don't. I mean, they've got DPJ back there returning punts, and that's just not his game. That's not what he does. No. He's basically doing that because they don't have anybody else.
But he's not fumbling, he's not muffing.
No, and he had like a 7 or 8 yard return last week, which, with how punts are being done these days, to get even 5 to 10 yards is plenty good for a return.
I just wonder, what the Bubba Ventrone thing is there, but I agree with you. I mean, Myles Garrett and Dustin Hopkins pretty much won that game. Everybody else did everything they could to lose it. So,
and we should mention,
kudos to the two of them.
Myles Garrett was just a fucking wrecking ball. That's the type of game that we talk about him needing to have, where he just wrecks the fucking game. That's the type of stuff that we say. That's the type of stuff that we see T.J. Watt and Nick Bosa doing, and we keep getting Micah
Parsons,
thank you, and Micah Parsons doing. So that to see Myles Garrett, it shows that he understands the situation and he understands that he needs to elevate his play while they got PJ Walker in there.
Right, but maybe when you jump offside, don't stop.
Yeah, just keep going. Let him blow the whistle.
Let him blow the whistle. Like,
you can keep running, because if he keeps running, they're going to blow the whistle, and then you just let up and run by the quarterback and go back and do it again.
Exactly.
So as we move on to the rest of the slate, we'll look at the other games in the AFC North. Right now, the Baltimore Ravens are 5-2. They lead the division. Steelers are tied with the Browns at 4-2. The Bengals are 3-3. And the Bengals have a huge matchup. They're traveling to the West Coast for what is the game of the week. The San Francisco 49ers host the Bengals. They are now 5-point favorites. This line moved a full point. Yesterday it was only 4. Minus 225 for the Niners, plus 185 for the Bengals. Over-under sits at 43.5. The reason for that line moving is Brock Purdy reportedly made considerable progress and probably is going to start. They're saying Sam Darnold should be ready to play, but it looks like it's going to be Brock Purdy. I don't know if that's a good thing the way he's been playing lately, Jimmy. Is there a chance San Francisco could drop 3 games in a row?
I think if all the other weapons are mostly healthy, I don't think it matters if it's Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold. I mean, I think
that's fair.
I think it's the same guy. Like, I'll probably take for the purpose of our pod, I'm going to take the Bengals because I feel like it's a field goal game. But yes. I don't really want any part of this because I don't know what Burrow's going to look like coming off a bye. I would think he would look better, but I don't know.
See, I'm pretty comfortable taking Cincinnati in this game, and I liked them when it was 4, and now I obviously like them more when it's 5. They're rested. They're coming off a bye. San Francisco's had 2 rough weeks in a row. I think this is where we sort of get into the dog days of the NFL season, and San Francisco kind of got punched in the mouth, and Cincinnati has the weaponry on offense to hurt San Francisco and keep this game close. I agree with you. This feels like a close game late. It feels like a field goal game. And if this is a close game late in the fourth quarter, we've seen Brock Purdy fail repeatedly to come through when they need him to in big moments. So that's why I like Cincinnati right now. Until I see Brock Purdy show up in the fourth quarter of a close game, it's going to be tough for me to bet on San Francisco against good teams.
Yeah, I fully understand that, for sure.
Or at least until Debo comes back.
There you go.
Because he helps solve a lot of their problems.
He sure does.
Up next, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. The Jaguars are 2-point road favorites. The Jaguars are minus 135 on the money line, plus 115 for the Steelers. The over-under sits at 40.5. Jimmy, we've talked about Pittsburgh as home dogs. They're usually pretty good in these spots, but we also both like Jacksonville. Can Jacksonville do the Browns a solid here and close out a game in Pittsburgh?
I don't think so. The Jags, The Jags played 4 games in 19 days before this one. So you're coming off your bye, but that was still a lot of football. They've stacked wins. The offenses looked good, but not as dominant as I thought it would be. The things the Steelers' defense gives up, I'm not sure the Jags can really exploit. And we know the Steelers is a home dog in a close game. I actually like the Steelers' money line here.
Wow. I don't like this game at all. I'm leaning Jacksonville because I think their offense is starting to play a little better. Trevor Lawrence has been playing pretty well. Etienne's been playing great. Calvin Ridley's been kind of up and down. This is a really good gauge game for Jacksonville because if they're going to ascend to that second spot in the AFC behind Kansas City, this is a game they have to win. They don't have to win it by like 10, but this is a game they got to win by at least a field goal. So I'm betting on the Jags So I think the Jags win this game. I think they cover. I don't like it enough to bet it. I'll probably keep it out of any parlays I put together just because Pittsburgh's one of those teams, man, when you bet against them and then 3 weird fucking things happen that go their way and you're just sitting there going, what the fuck?
Yep.
So I don't want to be in that position tomorrow. I want to enjoy my Sunday, so I'm not going to deal with that shit. So I think it's a stay away, especially with Jacksonville having their bye next week. Like I'm always a little worried about teams that have their bye coming up, like because their division's basically wrapped up.
Yeah.
All right, the final team in the AFC North is the Baltimore Ravens, who are ahead in the division. They are traveling west to take on the Arizona Cardinals, who are not good. The Baltimore Ravens are 10-point favorites, minus 480 for their money line, plus 360 for the Cardinals. Over-under sits at 44.5. Can Baltimore cover this big line, Jimmy?
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, this is the type of game that Harbaugh teams, we see them just repeatedly win these games by 14 points.
I mean, they just beat the brakes off of a team that a lot of people thought was one of the best in the NFC, and the Cardinals are one of the 2 worst. I don't know why. I don't know what this line would be at for me to stay away from it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that Baltimore defense against Josh Dobbs just looks like easy money.
Yeah, and I mean, Lamar looks great. He looks really good in the Todd Monken offense, and Lamar is historically almost perfect versus the NFC. So the Cardinals will continue to ascend towards Caleb Williams.
One of the things I like in this game is Baltimore's defense to shut down Arizona. I like the under here. Baltimore's defense has given up 13.9 points a game, which is just pretty astonishing. They just shut teams down. I don't know what Dobbs is going to do here.
I knew they overtook Cleveland for points allowed after what happened last week, but I didn't realize it was that low. My goodness.
Yeah, Cleveland's sitting at 19.2. They've actually fallen pretty far down. They're just behind Atlanta and Houston.
Well,
yeah, last week's game really knocked them down. Still, yardage-wise, they're miles ahead of everybody. Up next, we have an NFC East showdown. The Miami Dolphins are hosting the New England Patriots. They are 9.5-point favorites. The minus 145 for the Dolphins, plus 345 for the Pats. Over-under sits at 47. It seems like when these two teams play, weird shit happens, especially when they play in Miami. But we just saw Miami kind of just take it to New England a few weeks ago. Do you have any reason to think that that's not going to repeat itself?
No, I mean, I think New England won their Super Bowl last week with beating Buffalo. New England wasn't good in Miami when their teams were good, and Tua is undefeated against Belichick. So I'm all in on the minus 9.5. I think they'll win by 2 touchdowns.
I agree. I would also encourage our bettors. This is the week to not bet on the Tyreek Hill overs. Bill Belichick is notorious for looking at the other team and saying, what do you want to do? We're going to shut down your best guy. And Tyreek Hill, he does have 2 touchdowns in the last couple of games against the Patriots, but his yardage totals are down like around 60 yards. I like this to be a Jalen Waddle game. I like this to be a Mostert game. So I like those two guys this week, and I think you should fade Hill just for this week. Do you put any is there? So as far as New England goes, everybody was ready to fire Bill Belichick. They get a win. I mean, if they lose their next 2 or 3 games, all that chatter is going to come back. Do you think New England's offense is going to look more like it did last week, where it was dink and dunk and don't let Mac Jones kill us? Or do you think at some point that's just not going to work and they're going to have to try to open it up more?
I think at some point that's not going to work, but I think that's what you have to do if Mac Jones is your quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Regardless, they just don't have weapons, and they don't have a very good quarterback, and
have to hope Ramondre Stevenson can get you down the field on a screen pass or a broken run, and then Zeke can punch it in. Like you can't let him throw when the field condenses on short yardage downs or down near the end zone. You cannot let Mac Jones throw the football. I think last week is what the offense has to look like, and if the defense can play that good against Buffalo, maybe they can play that good against another team. But I don't really believe it.
Wow. I mean, that's just a tough road to hoe, man.
Belichick has seemed to, for whatever reason, even during this run of Buffalo, he's tended to have Sean McDermott's number. So I think it's just one of those weird things.
Yeah, I think Miami. We see that though. We see some coaches seem to just be able to beat other coaches. Belichick with Stefanski with Zach Taylor.
I think what you have to be able to do to beat Miami, I don't think New England can do. So,
yeah, I obviously agreed. Our next matchup sees the Dallas Cowboys hosting the LA Rams. The Cowboys are 6-point home favorites, minus 278 for their money line. The Rams are plus 228 or plus 222. Pardon me. The over/under sits at 45.5. Everything in my brain, Jimmy, tells me that Dallas should win this game pretty easily, but I like the Rams here for some reason. Is there, why? Why do I like the Rams in this game?
Because the Cowboys offense hasn't shown they can blow anybody out that's a good team. I don't think the Rams are great, but I think they're good. If this game was only 3 quarters long, I would actually take the Rams money. But for 4 quarters, I don't think they're going to be able to hang in against the Cowboys defense. So I do believe the Cowboys. What really
worries me is that the Rams have been giving up a lot of sacks lately. Stafford's been getting hit a lot, and Dallas can get after the quarterback.
Yeah, I think I actually really like the under in this game. But I think the Cowboys will win, but I think the Rams can keep it to 5-6 points. So I may end up with a push, but I'll take the Rams here.
Yeah, this is one of those. I don't know why, but I like the Rams to cover. I think Dallas wins this game. I don't think they're going to lose, but this feels like it might be a field goal game. Jimmy, it is the Battle of the Meadowlands. We have the New York Jets hosting the New York Giants, and they're getting the home 3. The Jets are minus 160 on the money line. The Giants plus 135. Over-under on this one sits at 35, which I remarked to my spouse Minor. I was like, wow, that's one of the lowest over-unders I've ever seen, and we have one lower coming up.
Yes, we do.
So Zach Wilson versus Tyrod Taylor, the matchup that we were all expecting when we saw this game on the calendar, is I don't want to watch any of this game. I like the Jets here because I just think the Jets defense is by far the best unit on the field. Do you see it that way? Do you think the Giants can do something to upset the Jets?
No. I want to watch parts of this game, though. There's going to be some fun shit going on here. But no, this is a stay away for me because it feels like a field goal one way or the other. But the under in this game will definitely be in a lot of parlays for me.
Yeah, this is another one of those where you see that under and you immediately want to bet it because both teams' offenses are pretty poor. And then it's but this is maybe the game where they try some shit. They throw out a fluke play or something like that and try and put some extra points on the board, and it ends up being high scoring. But I don't think that's going to happen in this case.
Yeah, I don't think the Giants can generate that kind of offense. Neither can the Jets. I really don't think so.
The Giants sitting at 2-5 are in a pretty desperate spot here, which is the only thing that gives me pause. Maybe they come out with a lot of fire and Zach Wilson just throws the game away. The Jets inexplicably are in the playoff hunt at 3-3, despite the fact that they should have one win. But here they are. It seems to be the case with a lot of AFC teams. Like, Cleveland's got 4 wins. We don't think they've been that good. We don't think Vegas is very good. We don't think the Jets are very good, but we don't think Pittsburgh's very good. Indianapolis has got 3 wins. Like, it just the AFC being better than the NFC definitely seems to be leading us towards more overs on the AFC, and that's something we should remember for next year.
Yep.
Another matchup between an AFC team and an NFC team sees the New Orleans Saints taking on the Indianapolis Colts in Indy. The Saints are 2-point road favorites, minus 135 on their money line, plus 115 for the Colts. The over-under on this one sits at 43.5. I'm just going to keep betting against the Saints because I think they stink, Jimmy. Is there any reason to talk me out of that?
No, give me the Colts money line here. You know, the Saints are falling apart. Maybe a loss to the Colts gets Dennis Allen fired and Derek Carr benched. You know, I don't. If you've listened to us for a couple of years, you know what we think of Gardner Minshew. But he should be able to replicate exactly what they did last week. They'll hit a couple shot plays. Jonathan Taylor looked pretty good, and now he gets a worse defense than Cleveland. So, I think the Colts win this outright.
There still seems to be a lot of sentiment out there for the New Orleans Saints, and I know they're the only team in the AFC South with a positive point differential. They're +6. Everybody else is minus. The Falcons are -18. The Buccaneers -7. But they look like a bad team. I guess I shouldn't say a bad team. They look like a bad good team. Like, of the bad teams, they're a good team, but overall they're a bad team.
Yeah, and even if you don't love the Colts money line, the Saints are 1-5-1 versus the spread this year. So
yeah, you can take those 2 points, man.
Yep.
Up next, we have the Minnesota Vikings coming off a win against San Francisco, traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers. The Vikings are 1-point road favorites. Their money line's -110. The money line on the Packers is -110. Over-under on this one sits at 41.5. The Jordan Love experiment is not going very well, Jimmy. And I like Minnesota to win this game on the road and get themselves right back in the thick of the NFC playoff hunt.
Yeah, you know, the Vikings that was a tremendous win for them. They've won 2 in a row, but you're on the road on a short week against a division foe, so I'm going to take the Packers.
Fair enough. I just don't think Green Bay is very good. They look like a team that has been competing hard for the playoffs the last few years and came up short, and they know they don't got it.
Yep.
I mean, they're sitting at 2-4, a -2 in point differential, so maybe they think, all right, we're right there, a few breaks here or there, but I don't know how they can really rally behind Jordan Love. He just hasn't been very good.
Yeah, and they may be one of the teams in the market for one of these quarterbacks coming out too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very true. Up next, we have the Houston Texans traveling to Carolina to take on the Panthers. The Texans, 3.5-point road favorites. -178 on the money line for them, +150 for the Panthers. Over-under sits at 43.5. So this is a battle of rookie quarterbacks. Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud were taken 1 and 2. And if I was a Carolina fan, this game's probably going to make me want to slit my wrists because you could have had C.J. Stroud, who looks like the real deal. Like, he looks like he knows how to play quarterback. He looks like a really good player. But you have Bryce Young, who looks like he's probably not going to be able to stay healthy for 17-game seasons and can't see over the line. I like Houston here. When I talked to Sully yesterday on his pod, I still like Houston as an outside crash-the-party playoff team, maybe. This is a game they got to win to have that happen. So I like Houston here, Jimmy. I assume you do too, because you've liked Houston all year.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers, really need this game. Really, really need this game.
You're just saying that because they're 0-6.
but with everything going on, they need this game, but I don't think they can keep it close. I'm not afraid of the 3.5.
No.
CJ Stroud knows how to play in a hostile environment. He knows that big game energy. He's going to feel it from Carolina, but I think he'll be okay. And he's absolutely going to want to show Carolina up close and personal how much of a mistake they made. So I actually like the over. I think Houston's going to score some points. I like the offensive player props for Houston. I think Houston is going to beat the crap out of Carolina in this game.
Yeah, I think I like the over too now that you mention it. Like, Houston puts up points, and I think Carolina will find a way to get some points on the board. Not a lot.
Score somewhere, yeah, but I think they'll score enough to cover it.
Yeah, Houston should be able to get close to 30.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
And I like just overall where Houston is. I didn't think Houston would be very good before the year. They've definitely proven me wrong. They're plus 22 on the season for their point differential. They're 3-3. They look a lot like maybe half a step behind where Jacksonville was last year. Like I don't think they're not going to win the division because I think Jacksonville's too good. So, 8-9 wins isn't going to do it. But this looks like an 8-9 win team that coming into next year is going to vie with Jacksonville for the division. So good up on Houston, and it would just be fitting that over the next 3 years Houston's better than the Browns because that's just how the world seems to work for us.
Right, but I think something that Houston, it's something that matters, and I'm sure part of it's because he played there, but if you're stop hiring these college guys from programs that score a bunch of points against shitty college defenses and hire NFL coaches who have been on good staffs.
But Jimmy, Matt Rule's Baylor team put up 100 points against, Southwestern Texas State A&M.
Exactly. Stop it.
And Bobby Petrino scored a whole bunch of points against, when he was at Louisville with Brian Brom against a whole bunch of shitty teams.
Stop it. Hire guys like D'Amico Ryans who have led units that were good on good staffs. Hire those guys to be your head coach. They understand how to win. They can change cultures. So good on D'Amico Ryans.
I was critical of Indianapolis hiring, what's his name, Sarkisian from Philadelphia. He was their offensive coordinator. And it's like, well, why can't Eric Bieniemy get a job and you're hiring this guy? But, I mean, the Colts are 3-4. That's better than I thought they'd be at this point. So he must be doing something right.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
Speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, they will be traveling to Washington to take on the Armada. They are 7-point favorites.
Armada.
Minus 335 for the Eagles, plus 260 for the Commanders. 43.5 is the over-under. We saw this game a few weeks ago. Philly was at home, and they sort of sleepwalked through it. Washington kept it close. I don't see that happening this time, Jimmy. What do you see happening here?
Me either. The Armada let me down big time last week, and as a penalty, they will get waxed by the Eagles.
A.J. Brown making his case for being the best wide receiver in the league, just putting up 100-yard games like it's nobody's business. He looks great. When I was talking to Sully, we talked about the best quarterbacks in the league. I have been very critical of Jalen Hurts pretty much since his rookie year, and then 2 years ago when they lost in that first-round playoff game. It was like, well, if he can't run, you can shut them down because he can't throw. Well, last year he showed he can throw, and he continues to show he can throw. Despite the turnovers, I'm not worried about Jalen Hurts. I think he's one of the three best quarterbacks. I've got Mahomes one with Burrow, and Hurts is in that second tier. I think Hurts has just shown himself to repeatedly be a really good quarterback. And the way they're using the brotherly shove, they are just, it's in other teams' heads now.
Yep.
They are just using it as a cudgel and just wearing them down. And it's such a weapon. And
like with the 49ers showing that if things get off script at all, Brock is really struggling. I think it makes the Eagles the best team in the NFC. But part of that is winning the games you're supposed to win.
Yeah, and this is a game like that.
It's a game like that. So I want to see them dominate this game to show, we're for real. We're ready to make another run.
Yeah. And I may have this weekend put a couple of bets on Super Bowl matchups. I have all of the matchups between San Francisco and Kansas City and Philadelphia. I think those are the three teams that are going to play for the Super Bowl. So I put some money on that with some high odds. Not big wagers, but just putting some future bets out there to help myself out and give me something to make some bets against if they should falter, the odds should work out in our favor.
Yep.
Up next, we have my Atlanta Falcons traveling to Tennessee to take on the Titans. The Falcons are 2.5 point favorite, 2.5 point road favorites. Minus 145 on the money line, plus 122 for the Titans. Over under sits at 35. 35. That is so low, Jimmy.
Yeah, bet it though.
You're just saying that because you've seen Malik Willis play quarterback. He's not good.
Yeah.
He's not good
Not
at
good.
all. That Tennessee team probably, if they lose this game, it's probably a fire sale.
So here's the thing. After an impressive win last week to take control of the division and then to watch Buccaneers lose to the Bills, the Falcons should dominate this game. So because of that, I'm taking the Titans money line.
That is a completely honest thing to do because we have seen on occasion these, like, this is Tennessee's a tested playoff team. I mean, they failed all those tests in the playoffs, but they are a team that has been in the playoffs in recent years, and Mike Vrabel's got no quit in him. So I would not be surprised if Tennessee responds with a really good game. That's why I wouldn't be betting this game. I'm taking Atlanta for our picks, mainly because I have Atlanta to win the division, make the playoffs, and hit over, which they're already halfway to that. But it wouldn't surprise me if a professional team like Tennessee comes out and plays well. Do you think they're going to be dealing guys?
If they lose this game, yes.
Where do you think Derrick Henry winds up if they trade him?
I don't know if there's anybody who really has a need for Derrick Henry.
There's been talk of Baltimore. I think he'd be a good fit in Buffalo because I think they need somebody that can run the ball and can break tackles, and that's Derrick Henry, even if he only has to run the ball 12 times a game because they throw so much with Allen. And I think just him and Lamar in the backfield together is pretty scary. Even with Henry at his, he's not at his peak anymore, but I don't think he needs to be at his peak with the way they can run the ball in Baltimore. That would scare me, is them getting him.
Yeah, I think with Henry, I think it will absolutely depend what Tennessee wants the price tag to be.
That's fair. That's very fair. What do you think about Hopkins? You think he gets dealt?
I think he should get dealt. I think he's shown just enough that a good team who could use a wide receiver would make a move for him.
Do you think his numbers haven't been good, but I think that's as much a product of the quarterbacks as anything. He looks like a guy, I would definitely be looking at him in terms of like Randy Moss with the Raiders. We've talked about this before, where all of a sudden he leaves the Raiders and he looks like his old self. Now, Hopkins isn't as good as Randy Moss was then, and I'm not saying he's going to go somewhere and score 30 touchdowns like Moss did that one year. But, Kansas City made a move for a wide receiver already with Hardman. If Kansas City got DeAndre Hopkins, everybody would shit themselves. If, I don't know, who else out there could use a receiver? Maybe the Chargers?
Yeah,
to try
I think
to replace
it would be
Williams?
I think it would be more of one of these teams that are like that. One of these AFC teams that are battling, who's like, man, maybe if we had a playmaker, like maybe the Colts win this game, and maybe they go after him. Like
maybe
I think
Buffalo could you? I mean, Gabe Davis ain't the number 2 guy they need. He's a slot guy.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, like I said, I think with Tennessee, I think it will just depend on what the price tag is they put on these guys. I think because only going to give up so many assets for Derrick Henry or DeAndre Hopkins at this stage.
Yeah, and they'll both be gone after the season. You'll have their rights if you want to hold on to them. You'll have first dibs, but both of them are cut candidates at the end of the year. And I think Hopkins only has a 1-year deal, so those you're not making long-term commitments with those trades.
Now, I think as well as Jordan Addison has played, the Vikings win this game against the Packers. Maybe they go after Hopkins for the remainder of that 1 year.
I don't think so. Jefferson will be back at some point, and then you have those two guys, Addison and Jefferson, and that should at least be fun.
Yeah, fun for sure. Absolutely.
One team that's not very fun is the Denver Broncos, Jimmy.
Oh, man.
They're just a mess. And
man.
For their reward of a bad season, they get to play the Kansas City Chiefs again. The Chiefs are 7-point road favorites in Mile High, minus 350 on their money line, plus 275 for the Broncos. Over-under on this sits at 47. Jimmy, the last time Kansas City lost to the Denver Broncos, Barack Obama was president.
Yeah.
Which is just a bonkers stat. It's been 16 games in a row. I don't see anything to change that here. I think Kansas City rolls.
Yeah, the Chiefs minus 7 and the under because I don't think they'll have to run up the score. But, like, these numbers are just kind of just absolutely silly. So, Andy Reid / Patrick Mahomes together. 12-0 versus the Broncos. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes together. 16-0 all-time versus AFC West opponents on the road.
That's just insane.
So, like, even if you think Denver can keep it close, please put the Chiefs in your money line parlays. They're not going to lose this game. And, you know, something like we were talking about earlier, the Broncos are 2-0 versus the NFC North and 0-5 versus everyone else.
Gee, what's special about the NFC North? Oh, yeah, those teams aren't very good. A stat that blew my mind when Sully and I were talking, the Kansas City Chiefs defense is giving up 15 points a game, Jimmy.
Yeah.
They're number 2 in the league. That is a big fucking problem for the rest of the league because we said it last year. The defense was really young. They had a whole bunch of rookies. I think they had 5 or 6 rookies starting on that defense last year. All of those guys look like they've gotten a little bit better. And if this defense is better than it was last year, they won the Super Bowl last year with Patrick Mahomes on one fucking ankle. So if their defense is going to be improved, the offense looks like a Swiss watch when they want it to. Nobody can stop Mahomes to Kelsey. They got Hardman back, which should help their deep ball game, even though a lot of teams are taking that away. They've got Pacheco to run the ball in between the tackles as a counter to their passing game. They just look like the total package right now, man. You may as well call them Lex Luger.
Oh, nice, son. Yeah, you know, they're getting back. They're getting back a little bit of that being fun again. I think Mecole Hardman was a big addition, and young Rashee Rice is looking really good. You hit it with Pacheco. And for me personally, as a bettor who we've enjoyed wins for the Chiefs, and somebody that likes to see other people frustrated with things that I don't understand why they frustrate them. I hope Taylor Swift goes to every game, and I hope she gets shown a million times every game. Because I don't understand why this... Would you really rather see the cutaways than the other fans in the crowd? I don't understand. Please, Taylor, keep going. Please, Travis, keep being incredible when she's there. I fucking love it. Go Chiefs.
I would also like to second those comments about everything involving Taylor Swift, not just as a football fan who wants to see football be fun, but also for the hilarity that I see on Reddit of Taylor Swift fans asking the most basic questions about football because they have no idea what's going on, and seeing there's a lot of people that are anti-Taylor Swift, but on some of the Reddit places I go to, there's all these football fans that are having really deep conversations with, you know, like teenage and 20 and 30-year-old Taylor Swift fans that have never watched football. And, you know, the back and forth. And, of course, there's always the double entendres because, you know, you talk about throwing deep and hitting tight ends deep. and everybody chuckles. It's just great. And as an AMC holder, Taylor Swift has a movie out there, so that's great too. So anything that is good for Taylor Swift right now is good for fun and good for my stock holdings.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see people enjoying watching a football game. And I will also say, like, if you don't listen or watch the New Heights podcast of the Kelsey brothers, you should, specifically for their No Dumb Question segment, where they are honestly answering questions from Taylor Swift fans about football. But one of them, during one of the games, Kelsey was compared to Gronk.
Yeah.
And and someone asked the question, "What is a grunk?" And if you have not heard Jason Kelsey's response, you need to go check it out. It was incredible.
What is a grunk? It kind of reminds me of, was that Crocodile Dundee 2, where he's like, I don't need a gun, I got a dunk.
Yeah.
What's a dunk? And then his strong-armed Australian buddy comes over and just knocks the bad guy out.
Yep.
That's a dunk. Up next, we have the LA Chargers at home against the Chicago Bears. The Chargers are 8.5-point favorites, minus 440 on their money line, plus 335 for the Bears. Over/under sits at 46.5. I don't want this game, Jimmy.
Man,
I think,
twice, dude.
I cannot trust the Chargers to beat anybody by more than a touchdown.
No, it like twice this year. The Bears have got me. They have hurt me. They have hurt me, and I hate it. But I can't take the Chargers to beat them by 8.5, which probably means the Chargers will win by 4 touchdowns. Because I'm going to take the Bears to cover.
So really, what we should do is bet the money line for Chicago and then put a parlay together for the Chargers, like Justin Herbert to throw like 3 touchdowns and just play both sides.
That's probably the way to go. I do think if somehow the Bears win this outright, Brandon Staley might get fired.
Yeah, they've got that look, man. They got that look of a team that we have seen a version of that team many times here in Cleveland, where everybody knows the coach is going to be fired. Everybody thought they were going to be better. They're 2-4 right now. I mean, if they wind up 3 weeks from now, they're, 4-5. Like, that's not where they need to be, man. And with Staley's a defensive guy, and their defenses always stink. So I don't know what's going on there. If I were them, I'd be going after Detroit's offensive coordinator, because I think pairing him with Herbert would be the way to go.
I think they got to win this game, but I just don't think they can beat anybody by 9 points right now.
Yeah, if they lose this game, I mean, the wheels are off the wagon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just mentioned the Detroit Lions, who got their asses kicked by Baltimore last week. Now, this week, they play on Monday. They turn around and play Monday night. They are hosting the Las Vegas Raiders, who I guess Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be back. I don't know if that's a good thing. I mean, it's probably better than having Brian Hoyer, but what are you going to do there? Minus 420 for the Detroit Lions, plus 320 for the Las Vegas Raiders. 46 is the over-under. Does Detroit bounce back here, Jimmy?
Yeah, they're playing a bad team, so they'll win by 3 touchdowns.
And they're home.
They're home inside against a bad team. They will beat the shit out of the Raiders. I don't think there's anything. You don't have to think like last week is what's going to happen to the Lions 2 more times this year when they play the Chargers and the Cowboys.
That sounds
the Vikings.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe the Vikings will turn the corner. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see how that Packers game looks. But I really think they're just going to lose 2 more games, and then I think the rest of their schedule, I think they're going to beat the crap out of teams.
Yeah.
Because I think when the skill level of the teams is close, I think the attitude the Lions have is going to elevate them to win. And I think the Raiders are really bad. I don't think the skill level is close. I think the Raiders have a couple dudes, and the rest of the team stinks. So I don't know what the Raiders do at coach. I'm glad I do not have to be a part of that situation. Yeah. Because I don't know. I don't know what you do. I really don't.
When I was on Sully's podcast, and I want to wrap on this, I just want to get your gauge on my thoughts on who's going to make the playoffs. Right now, Chiefs are going to roll in the AFC West. I think Jacksonville is going to roll in the AFC South. I have Baltimore winning the AFC North. I know I sounded down on the Bills. We talked while the Bills were playing. I still think the Bills are going to wind up winning the AFC East, Jimmy. I don't know why. I just do. I think they're going to beat Miami again because they're tough. Miami seems to struggle against tough teams. I have Miami as the first playoff team, as the 5 seed. And then I have Cincinnati, I think, is going to make a run, and they're going to get the second playoff seed. And then that third playoff seed, I think, is going to come down to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Houston, and the Chargers if they can get their shit together. Does that sound about where you're looking at? How do you see the AFC right now?
Yeah, so far in the AFC, I don't have to change any of my playoff teams around. I think the Chargers get that last spot. I think I'm still not sure when we get a little deeper into the season. Maybe they go play some cold weather games. I don't quite know what that Miami offense is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So the wild card teams might flop around a little bit. But I think you nailed it with the Chargers getting that last spot.
Yeah, I don't trust the Jets. I don't trust the Colts, and I don't trust the Raiders. Like I don't see those teams finishing at 8 or at above 8 wins. I just don't see it.
I think it's still dependent on what Cleveland's offense looks like.
Yeah, well, I'm done waiting for this offense to be good. I just don't think it's going to be good. And even if Watson plays this year, I don't think he's going to be good. Like this shoulder injury isn't just going to get better. And even if he takes 3 weeks off, we've talked about it on this podcast before, he has so much educational debt from the 2 years that he missed on how defenses have adapted to what he was doing 3-4 years ago when he was really successful. And you could see it in that the interception he threw against the Colts. That wasn't an arm strength issue. He just threw that ball right into coverage because he didn't see the safety. He just didn't see the coverage. He didn't know what was there. And that's not an arm strength thing. So even if his arm gets healthy, he's still not seeing the field because defenses have adjusted, but he hasn't been playing to know what those adjustments that the defenses have been making.
No, I agree. But that would be the only Watson comes back, looks good. They stack some wins. They take that last spot. But other than that, I think the Chargers get that last spot, and I think you're spot on in the AFC.
Okay, in the NFC, I think Philadelphia is going to be the 1 seed. I think they just have the inside track now with the Niners losing those 2 games. I do still think the Niners are the second best team. Detroit's probably going to win the NFC North. I'd be surprised if they collapsed and Minnesota caught them. Well, I guess I wouldn't be super surprised, but I would be a little surprised because the Lions' schedule is so easy. It looks like Atlanta's going to win the NFC South, but I mean, whoever ends up winning the NFC South is going to be hosting Seattle or Dallas, so good fucking luck there. Like I said, I have Seattle and Dallas as the first 2 playoff teams, meaning there's 1 spot open, and it looks like the Vikings are going to try and make a run and get it, and that's where I think that ends.
Yeah, I'm not willing to give up on the fighting Baker Mayfield to Tampa Bay just yet, but that for me, I just have to flop. Because I had the Vikings winning the division.
Yeah, I did too.
And the Lions is the wild card, so I just got to flop that. But I agree with you. I think you're spot on there. But I do think you're going to see some first round exits from the Lions and whoever wins the NFC South. I think they'll both lose week 1.
Yeah. So just looking at playoffs, just looking at Tampa Bay, they're 3-4. They have Houston coming up, then Tennessee, then San Francisco, Indianapolis. They got 2 with Carolina, 1 with Atlanta, 1 with New Orleans, Green Bay, and Jacksonville on their schedule. Even if this team winds up with only 7 or 8 wins, I think that's a successful season for them because everybody thought they'd be one of the 3 worst teams in the league.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think 7-8 wins would be success. And I still, like I said, I still don't trust Arthur Smith. I don't know what Atlanta, what they're going to end up looking like, but I do think I'm not going to give up on the Bucs just yet. But yeah, I think they've already overperformed, and if they can figure out a run game, they could possibly win some games. Like I think they've got 3 losses for sure left on the schedule, so they're going to have to beat the teams that they're close to or possibly better than. They can't stumble again like they did against Atlanta last week.
Absolutely. Well, that's it. That's week 8. Everybody's playing this week. Like I said, no buys. A lot of touchdown-ish spreads from 7 to 10 points this week and some bad teams playing each other. We'll get, again, more information to see how these teams are shaking out. How does Detroit respond? Can Miami take care of business? Can Baltimore take care of business? What happens with Jacksonville and Cincy in their games? How does that Browns defense play? And we'll get all those answers tomorrow while we watch some football, Jimmy. So thank you for joining me to break all this down.
No place I'd rather be, brother.
And I would like to thank all of you for listening. You can like this podcast below and subscribe so that you can get all our future podcasts. We do these every week. At some point, we'll probably do another Browns recap season, probably in a couple of weeks. We'll see, probably right before that Baltimore-Pittsburgh stretch, just to see what's going on and if Watson's going to come back. So stay tuned for that. those will be coming up here short, and we'll have those coming up here in a few weeks. For Jimmy Champ, I am Evan Belfiore. Thank you for listening to No Broken Legs.